Well, thanks for chatting with me today. I think
Yeah.
at least the people in my network have been pulling a lot out of these conversations and some of the nuggets that have been shared. Um, I feel like you and I probably could have scheduled one for the whole morning and had plenty to talk about, but
I mean, dude, we got 30 years we can walk through. So
I know, it's crazy. But I would love, so first of all, what I don't know is I don't know even if you ever have gone through like a layoff or anything like that. I assumed yes, just because I feel like just
yeah.
about everybody has, but
I've been laid off, I've been fired. Like, I could talk about all of it. Like, yeah.
let's start with that. What was I guess what was your first one and what was that experience? Because I'm sure that the first one's probably the scariest one for a lot of people. So
Yeah. I mean, I'll be very transparent on this one. This is gonna probably actually shock a lot of people. First one was self-induced. I was working at a trucking company back in Iowa. It was
yeah,
before we moved, and I was burning myself out. I was working tons of hours, probably. I mean, they had overtime you could sign up for. He was covering shifts, but it wasn't like time and a half overtime, but you still got paid for it.
yeah,
And I mean, I was working something like 90, 110 plus hours a week, just
gross.
killing
Yeah,
it. And it all came to a head one night. And I had basically had a episode and
yeah.
smashed a computer because I got frustrated at the driver. And about a week later, I was let go.
I mean,
So
you
yeah, self,
had just to,
but
just to pause you real quick. You had, I mean, you were married at the time, right? With
mhm,
with Nikki, and then did you have all of your kids by that point or no?
all four kids.
Yeah. So I mean, just we don't have to go too
No,
far down
no
that
stress
path.
in my life anymore.
Yeah, but just you're trying to support a family and you got all this stuff going on, and I get it. So, all right. Anyway,
Yep.
go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, it was scary. And it was one of those where, the state of Iowa, they do question, they ask like, hey, how come you aren't employed anymore? And I was actually not eligible for unemployment for that, which was really scary. And so all of a sudden now I have no job. I um, have very minimal savings. We've up until probably the last few years, Nikki and I have really scraped by with a lot of stuff. We had kids very
Yeah.
young. You and I have known each other for a long time. You know my story of knocking her up in college, and
Right.
it just our life motto has been just figure it out. So we just figured a lot of stuff out, and so
Such
that
a
was
we,
really
we could do
scary.
a whole episode on that, by the way. It's such a good story of just like a relationship persevering, and now you guys have this like
Yeah, I
gorgeous
mean,
family.
like I
So
said, you were there from the beginning, man. You
yeah,
saw all the craziness. So, um, or at least part of the craziness, not all of it, but
yeah,
yeah. So we kind of had been talking about moving. Like it was very just cursed. Like 'cause I was done living in Iowa. I hated it. Like I loved all the people I met,
yeah.
present company
I
included.
mean, same,
Um,
same.
but I didn't want to live there anymore. And so we started looking around and really we wanted to be close enough that like we could visit a lot, but also not too close that people could surprise us. And so it really came down to Kansas City or Chicago. And as you know, we had teammates that lived around Kansas City
Yeah.
back in college, and I didn't get the best vibe from them as far as what logistics and transportation would be like out there. So Chicago was it, and we had some connections. It actually worked out really well. That Nikki's best friend from high school uh, lived here in Des Plaines, where we live, like literally a mile from where we live currently. Uh, and that was a deciding factor on where we moved. So I moved out here, and so I know I'm kind of getting a little off track of being unemployed, but this was my reintroduction to the workforce.
Yeah, no, I
I
like I like hearing this.
I was very scrappy. I lived on their couch for a couple weeks, and then they introduced me to a friend of theirs that had an extra bedroom. I slept on an air mattress for 9 months, and went and I found a job at a brokerage. Uh, they had just landed a new customer who like the promise was there to grow the business,
Yeah.
and I basically had about 30 days to prove myself there. And so trying to figure all that out, make money, send money back home, figure out like getting around everything out here in Illinois. And so it was very challenging. But I did it. And I learned a lot about how to grow a brokerage and how to grow a business during that
Yeah.
time. Built my carrier network very, very quickly. The one positive with going back and forth to Iowa fairly frequently was drive right by I-80 truck stop every time I'm there.
A
So lot of carrier relationships were
lot
developed
of
there.
leads right there.
Yeah, so I did, so there's a good one for all you carrier reps. Like, go to a truck stop, go meet truckers. It's actually not the worst thing in the world, and I learned a ton about just the
Were you
industry being there.
were you actually even though this obviously isn't specifically like a logistics
Mhm.
conversation, but I would now my just like sales guy is kicking in, and what are some of the things that you when you would drive by I-80, were you literally just driving into the parking lot, stopping and like going up and shaking hands, or like what were you doing?
I went up. I took what little money I had, and I would buy about a dozen cups of coffee. I would walk around to drivers. They were outside of their truck. I would never go knock on the door because I didn't want to be
Yeah,
like those kind of people. But if they were outside their truck, I would say, "Hey man, appreciate what you do. Here's a cup of coffee. By the way, I work with a lot of trucking companies, helping me with freight, work in the brokerage space. Um, I don't know if you'd be the person I'd talk to, or do you have a dispatcher I would talk to? If I can fill your trucks up and get you home, I'd love to do it."
love
And
that.
it was a real quick sales pitch. I mean, I did have coffee thrown in my face once, which I thought was pretty funny. Uh, but if nothing else, they took the coffee and they were nice and they were
Yeah,
polite. And then a couple times I had some extra time, and I actually told one guy, I'm like, hey, like, I've this is as close to a tractor as I've ever been. Like, can you show me around? Like,
yeah,
I hear stuff when I talk to drivers. I don't know what it is. Some like, what is a glad hand? What are all these different things? And he walked me around the truck. He took me on a full pre-trip inspection. He took about an hour out of his time, and it was awesome. So it
amazing.
was, and it was dope. Is so Roger and I still talk. So you're talking 18 years later. He and I still talk,
That's so
and
cool.
he's just a crotchety old man who loves running from Chicago to California, and he's awesome. I love Ross.
I love those guys. That's the
Yeah.
best. Old
Uh,
school.
so that what that translated to was I grew my book of business. I grew it very quickly, and uh, because when we went to school and I was going to school to be a teacher, and so I took that ability to develop curriculum and
Yeah.
turn it into a training program for us to grow the brokerage. And so I became the director of training. I was one of the carrier sales managers, because you wear multiple hats in a smaller business. And
Mhm.
um, when Nikki moved here with the kids at the end of the school year, she did not have to have a job for a long time. Actually, about 6 years.
Yeah.
Once Ella went back to school, she wanted to, or once Ella got to school, got to kindergarten, she wanted to go work. And so that's what got her into group fitness, and she took her time in to get into that. So, but it was awesome that, I went from this very, very scary time
Hmm.
of, we may lose our home, we might be homeless, and to 12 months later, what a difference a year makes.
Yeah.
Um, we're
I mean,
living
not
out
even
in
not even
Chicago.
living with your family at the point, like you're on
Yeah.
somebody else's couch. It's crazy.
Yeah. Which for me was, and I don't recommend this to anybody because like the toll it took my mental health was really challenging, but also like I could do nothing else but focus.
Yeah.
Because if I focus on anything else, I would just break down and cry.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That's not to that level of probably it wasn't as scary, but that's actually how we moved to Dallas too. My brother lived down there when we originally moved to Dallas, and we just wanted out of Iowa. And so Kelsey she was in her final year of college.
Mhm.
Um, and so we were just like, F it. And so I quit my job and he let me live in his house for 6 months, and it just just
Yep.
found
Yep.
work, That's eventually ended up, at Echo and everything else. But yeah, it's like one of those things where when you look back, you're like, man, I don't even know if I would tell somebody else to do that. But in the moment, you're just like, just makes sense. Just bet on yourself and go for it.
Yeah, and that's yeah, and generally speaking, I would say that that works.
Yeah.
But I will say when you say bet on yourself, a lot of people go, "Oh, well, I do that all the time." No, you don't.
Yeah.
Because like saying, "Hey, I can do something" is one version of betting on yourself, but actually saying like I'm going to lay it all on the line, like I don't have an out. I've burned the ships.
Yeah.
That's a different level. Like and I never want to like measure people like, "Oh, like I had a family and like
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, I got five people that count on me for everything. Six now with Violet, so like
Yeah.
I don't got any options, man.
Who would have thought when we were playing soccer together that whatever it is now, 20, 30 years later, I'd be talking to a grandpa. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's a long way from Norrie Elementary playing with the Rockets, man.
I think you could be like the strongest man in logistics and the youngest grandpa in logistics or something like
I,
that.
I've met a few guys that are younger technically, but yeah, it's all the stuff that's happened. I kind of laugh about it now. Like none of this stuff was on the life bingo card, man.
Oh, of
Like
course.
if you catch us at Sports Zone or like out of Kingston, and I'm all, people from Cedar Rapids, Iowa will know these
Yeah.
things. I'm talking. No one else will know this stuff, but obviously we understand it. Like no one could have predicted this.
No.
Like one, I think everybody would generally assume like Bain's kind of crazy. He'd probably be dead before he's 30. That's what I assume. Um, like and so it's wild to look back on it, but it's awesome, and I love that because of the tempering that the universe has put on me. Like I know that there's a lot of value that I can bring to other people, which I'm really
Yeah.
excited about, and that's like probably what I'm most excited about now. Like whenever I am presented with a new challenge, whether it is you know jobs or lack of job, whatever. Like I know there is immense value in what I do because I've been through so much
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons you're always one of the first people I like to chat with because I think that's part of the reason people like to talk to me, and I feel like you're even a step beyond that in terms of just the life experience and things that you've had. So this is a total side note, but and not going too far down the personal life side of things, but when your daughter had her baby, um, I literally told Kelsey, I was like, man, obviously nobody is trying to have a kid, in their junior or senior year of high school. I was like, but if anybody was going to, you couldn't have had like better parents from an experience standpoint to help deal with that. Like the ideal situation for a not ideal situation, you know?
I'll tell you, man. We had I think, and we talked about this. I think when all of us had dinner that night, in March, like definitely had our WTF moment.
Yeah,
When we found out, and um, but I'll tell you one. Like Violet she's awesome. I love her so much. She
she's
is
adorable.
so
She's a
much fun, so much energy, so much like she's very much her mother's kid.
yeah.
Um, but what I love about it though is see my daughter's transformation too has been so cool. But I'm very humbled to hear that because I think there was a time, and you and I both know that I would not have been the first pick for that situation.
No, but it's just one of those where it's like, it's kind of like what you're saying already. Like I don't necessarily recommend this life path for you, but the fact that
Uh,
you had that path and all this experience, it just makes you also able to handle those challenges, which is pretty cool in retrospect, you know?
I agree.
Um,
Fun fact for those listening: Jason and my oldest daughter share a birthday.
oh yeah, that's right. I always forget that. And every year
Yeah.
when you post it, I'm like, oh, birthday buddies.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
It's coming up.
Hmm.
Coming up.
Yep.
Okay, so that was your first one. What's the next time you found yourself? Obviously, the next time through, your life situation was a little different. You were a
Mhm.
little more comfortable financially. So what was the second experience like?
Second experience was not self-induced. Um it was equally scary because it was just a weird time in my life. Um, I was deciding kind of, I'd left a role that I'd been at for about 5, 6 years. Because I had grown a trucking company up in Waukegan, Illinois, and there was about an 8 month gap where between that and when I started working at Uber Freight. But in the between there, I actually had left the company to go work and help start up a brokerage for
Mhm.
another trucking company. And this organization has been around for a long time. They had typically worked in other spaces, not in traditional logistics. And so they had a small team. They were doing a little bit of brokering. They had a lot of processes, a lot of things that were just out of whack. But to be fair, they weren't moving a lot. So they really were under the radar. But they wanted to grow the business, and I get that. And they had a big challenge with some of their owner operators that were technically attached to the brokerage with their contract, and they had to revamp that. So I helped with that, and in the process, that probably didn't make me super popular with a lot of the owner operators because, again, we built the contract that was going to be as friendly as possible to all parties,
Yeah,
whereas the previous one was incredibly driver friendly to the point that it was not sustainable.
right.
And there wasn't a great prior to me getting there wasn't a great job of educating them on that. And so really it was like, oh, they brought in this guy and he's just going to screw everything up. So it definitely a challenge. And my direct boss was a chief strategy officer. Um, he went on vacation and we got the contracts all signed, came back, and because the drivers were so disgruntled, they decided we're actually going to shut the brokerage down. Didn't tell me, We found out because I walked in and I saw my two employees packing their stuff up, and like, oh yeah, by the way, your car's getting shut off in a couple minutes. So what wasn't a great delivery, was really really
No,
hard.
that's a tough thing to walk into.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucked because we had just bought our house, and so we
How
had been
did
in the
you
house in a
how
year.
did you handle it in the moment?
Um,
Like what was your immediate react? Because again going back to like now you're kind of you've started going down that path of like you've become more mature, more,
mhm,
but I know you enough to know, and I was very much the same way when you're younger of like very quick to anger.
yep,
Um, so
and
how
you
do you
and
feel this
you, and
time?
you see my temper.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I would like to say that I was extremely professional. I was a definite hybrid of uh Bain 316 and professional
Yeah.
robber Bain. Uh, so yeah, I stormed into the office, and the first three words started with WTF. If nothing else, because the way I found out, it's like being fired over Twitter. Like what?
Yeah. That's
And
wild.
yeah, and it was all like I tried to call you. I'm like, this isn't a try, my friend.
Yeah.
And so like, okay, like so you're shutting the business down. So then I revert back into professional, and it was, what's the severance look like? It's like, oh no, we're not doing that. So
Jesus.
um he and I have talked since. Like I have no issues with him, my direct boss. It's more with some of the other leadership at the business.
Yeah.
But also it's at this point, like it's been a long time, over 10 years. And so there's no point in me like going full scorched earth. Because that was
Yeah.
my immediate response was, I'll burn this whole thing to the ground.
Yeah.
And but I then shifted gears. I call my dad, Bruce,
Yep.
fountain of wisdom, which he has no
Nice,
problem.
Bruce.
Yeah, he has no problem telling you how smart he is. But the fact is, he can back it up, so he's not bragging. Um, what was serendipitous about that was June 30th of that year, and so 2017. His cousin had actually had a medical episode and was in a coma out in San Diego, and she was not going to make it. It
Yeah.
was, it was not good. And so dad's like, "Well, you got some time on your hands, right?" I said, "Yeah, actually, I do." And what he had found out was that she had actually left her estate to him, which wasn't huge, but it wasn't small. And she had an estranged son who was showing up and kind of bullying my dad a little bit. And he's like, "I think I could use some security." I'm like, "That is something I can provide right now." So next morning, I was on a plane to San Diego, and I probably did about 10 trips to San Diego that summer. Which so again, serendipitous. I was able to help my dad and
Yeah.
kind of take care of a lot of that stuff, and that also freed me up, and I actually got a lot of extra time on my hands, which enabled me to go through the interview process at Uber Freight. So it was very much the universe working to help. I just didn't understand why I was doing that. Because again, I had to go kind of full scorched earth as soon as I got to San Diego. Um, but it was great because then it also led to every drawback I've ever had in my career has always led to something that is very, very amazing. And so like
Yeah.
all that happened during the summer, and I go to my first world championships. I win, which was awesome. The next day I'm on a plane. One of the weirdest things ever. I'm on a flight on September 11th. Supposed to be two Robert Bains on the flight. My dad had to change his very last minute. And so I get accosted by TSA when I'm in line. It's like, where's the other Robert Bain? I'm like, oh crap, this is horrible. And while I'm in the airport, I get the job offer from Uber Freight,
I love that. That's
which
so
was
great.
awesome. It was great. And it was
Did
my
they
first.
call you? Was it an email? Like what were you
It
what were you
was they called me, they walked me through the offer. I mean, it was a substantive offer. Like it was very, very nice.
Yeah.
Very, you know,
What a great call to get though while you're about to hop
yeah.
on. A
And so I get that, and then we figure out the start date was in a couple weeks. But Dad and I had already had planned because he had to get his cousin's car back to Maryland, as when they still lived in the Maryland Annapolis area. So he's like, "Cool, we're gonna do a road trip." And so my dad and I did this road trip because I had nothing but time on my hands, from San Diego to Vegas, Vegas to Idaho Falls to Western Montana, all the way across the state of Montana. We dropped down into Yellowstone. We did this like 10-day road trip. We covered
Oh,
like
that's fun.
4,000 miles together.
I love that.
And like I look at it like all this crap happens, but I also get this once in a lifetime trip with my dad.
Yeah.
that like 8 days out of the 10, we have no cell service. It's just me and him.
Yeah,
And
something you never forget. That's
no, it was
amazing.
awesome. It reminded me very much of like the old club days where like we're driving out to tournaments in Des Moines or Omaha or whatever, and like just me and my dad together, like it was awesome. And so like I got to relive that, in my 30s. And then as soon as I get home, I got a couple days at home, and then boom, I started a job at the hottest freight tech company at that time in the industry.
Yeah.
So it always worked out. I
Yep.
a good buddy of mine, John Moore, who I actually met at Uber Freight, he's like, you were probably the best person I've ever met at failing up. Oh, thanks. Jerk.
It's a compliment, kind of.
Little backhanded, but I took it. I was like,
Yeah,
I'll take it, to be honest.
yeah. If you, hey, you're the best at something, so yeah, lifting weights and failing up.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Uh,
hopefully the best all time one of these days. So,
yeah, that's um, okay. And you've had another since then, or no?
no, that's it. Those
Okay,
are like
cool. Those two.
I've changed jobs, and it was sometimes a little more amicable, but
Yeah,
it's
sure.
not like nothing like that where it's just, oh, by the way, you don't have a job anymore.
All right, let's take a sidebar. You've got this work ethic and things that you've been learning and building along the way. You've been really, really getting into, you know, powerlifting and things like that. It's what year did you start doing that?
Competing,
Yeah, competing in powerlifting.
2014.
Okay.
Yep.
So how did life's journey help you in powerlifting?
Oh, what a great question. At this point, like it's so intertwined, it's almost hard to say like what's done what.
Yeah,
Uh, I would say like soccer is what prepped me for that. Like looking back on it now, I mean, again, I always go back to like you saw this because you watched the whole process. Like getting hurt my freshman year, starting to put on mass, and like, and you saw the difference from when you graduated the year after I did to when you got to Mount Mercy. The
yeah,
difference in how I looked was insane, and I fell in love with the lifting aspect of it. But then so everything else, playing soccer and doing all that stuff and getting ready for that, prepped me for then when I did my first meet prep. All my coach did was just give me like, here's XYZ. I just go do it. I didn't ask questions. I was very coachable.
yeah,
And I think that's probably the biggest thing that sports has taught me always is you have to be coachable. I've learned some hard lessons in that. Uh, I think Amir was probably one of the great, our college coach and my high school coach the last 2 years, one of the best at teaching me that stuff, but also he gives people the grace to screw things up. It's not a death sentence. One of the best leadership lessons I ever learned from him was a a mess up, a failure. It's not a death sentence. It's a learning opportunity, and you're going to learn. Sometimes you learn the hard way, but it's not a career killer. And so that taught me to be coachable. Then getting into powerlifting and all Greg really did is he tweaked a lot of things technique wise. So he basically you're strong as all get out. He's like you just have power leaking everywhere because you have no idea what you're doing.
right.
And so he really didn't like put me on any type of like peaking or strength program. He just really focused on my technique. And my first meet, like the experience is incredible. I've told this story umpteen number of times where it's a 24-hour weigh-in. So I go in Saturday to go weigh in, and I actually compete on Sunday on my birthday. And so Nikki's out there with me. We're out in Sycamore, Illinois, middle of nowhere. And I walk into the gym and I see this whole setup, which is just totally foreign to me. A monolith with most people have never heard of or seen or anything like that. And I see, crazy weights. I see guys waddling around in these, really tight singlets and knee wraps. And never seen anything like this because I'm used to training at the Y or at an X Sport or something like that. You don't see this stuff. But I remember this so distinct where I see this guy in what I now know is a canvas squat suit. I just thought it was a super tight white singlet. And there's probably like mid nines, maybe 1,000 pounds loaded on the bar. And he picks up the weight and he doesn't step back. The hooks come away from it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's different. I've never seen that before. And then I hear all these different voices like back, open, open. Like, what are these people talking about? And it's cueing him to sit into the suit and to push his knees out and open into the legs of the suit because that helps create the tension, the brace. And then I hear this person yell up. So of course he's hit where he needs to get as far as from a depth perspective. This dude's face explodes. Blood shooting down. Actually, a shot goes out of his nose and
Oh man.
hits the ref in this nice white polo. And it's like 6 feet away. It's like this is
Yeah.
amazing. Stands up with it. He goes ref call rack. They put the bar back in the hooks and two white lights and a red light, which majority rules. It's a good lift. Everybody goes nuts. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like this is amazing. And Nikki's standing there next to me going, what the have you gotten us into? Like, what is this?
That's
And
wild.
so what that taught me from like a professional perspective is it is okay to be extreme about things.
Yeah.
It's okay to be different. And where I'm asking all these guys about this equipment they're wearing, and it's very different than how I'm training that time, which is training raw. I didn't question. I was like, this is just a different version of the same sport. Like, this is cool. And and that helped me as I got into like, all right, now you're gonna be a tech-enabled brokerage. It's a very different version of just slinging freight, which is what I've done my whole life
Yeah.
from a professional perspective. So it helped change my thinking, and also it reminded me like I've done some really cool stuff. Like I've lifted big weights. I've
Mhm.
separated myself into a very unique and special group of people. But I've done that by doing the stuff no one cares about, by, the little details of taking care of my body. I'm 42 years old. Unless someone knows I'm 42, no one has any clue that I'm that old. Everyone's in my early 30s. And so I've taken care of that kind of stuff. I've taken care of my body. I don't have major issues, knock on wood. Um, Everyone thinks between soccer and powerlifting, like my knee should be shot. Nope.
Yeah.
So because I do all that little stuff to make sure that everything stays put together. And so that then translates on the professional side to, hey, like, do I want to call these carriers from 1 to 3 every day? No. But I know that's the best time to do it because they're just getting back from lunch. They've probably already finished their day. They're starting to work on stuff for tomorrow. This is the time when a dispatcher is most apt to talk to me.
Yeah.
So that's going to help me build a carrier network. If I'm on the customer side, do I want to be calling, checking on my customers when I know we've just screwed up? No, but I need to. So I'm going to go do that, take the lumps, take the hit. And it also teaches you a level of responsibility. Like the other day, like I have a team around me. Like the Wolfpack, they are incredible. They're awesome. Uh, it is a group of some of the craziest individuals you'll ever see. And the expression of that training is by an individual on the platform when we're up there on meet day. But it's the whole group, right?
Hmm.
But when you translate that to a professional setting, is we have all these different people that are around us, but ultimately it's an expression of what you do in your efforts. But you have all these people that support you in it. And
Yeah.
so again, it teaches you how to be a team, but also, do things individualistically and do things in your own way. And and then understanding that there are some basics around like body ergonomics and technique, but ultimately like if I'm gonna make it work, I'm gonna make it work. And the
Yeah.
same thing with the business. Like as long as it's legal and it's to the letter of the rule, we're good to go, baby.
Love that. Okay, question on, okay, first of all, how long did you have between your job before Uber and then Uber?
It's about 7.5 months.
Okay, so, which is a,
Well, oh,
that's,
between the one that
how
I
long were
got,
you unemployed before Uber?
94 days,
Okay, which is, yeah, so I mean, that's
3 months.
3 months, which
Yep.
is not an insignificant amount of time. So, what was it? This is kind of a two-parter. A, what were some of the challenges of just like transitioning back into working again? B, what were the challenges of now transitioning to a company where you weren't like the known commodity and had to like rebuild your brand and establish yourself as a leader people can trust, like those kind of things?
So transitioning back was not as difficult as I thought it would be, because I had maintained a schedule the whole time. Uh, I never let myself sleep past 9 during the week.
Yeah,
I always made sure I was going to bed, between 10 and 11. Even if it was just laying there, like I just made sure of that.
yeah,
So I maintained a general schedule, which helped a ton. So that part wasn't a challenge per se. Um, Structuring the day though, as I was getting onboarded and learning my team, that presented a bit of a challenge just because I needed to. There's so many shiny things at Uber. And I'll use that specific, and there's so many different things you're looking at.
yeah,
But being brought in as a leader, that also presented additional challenges because you've got all these other leaders that want to interface with you, and you're right, you have to prove yourself, but also like you just have to kind of chill up in the cut and allow all that to come to you in some cases too.
Hmm.
Part of that is organizational culture as well. So I'd be very clear on that. There may be some organizations where these other leaders are not going to seek you out because
Yeah.
they want to see if you're going to have the gumption to do so. So kind of, if you can, my suggestion to everybody is your direct leadership. Ask them like, what is the culture here? Like, are people going to come to me or should I be going to them to introduce myself and specifically other leaders because
Yeah.
you're going to work interdepartmentally and that kind of thing. So then as far as establishing myself, that was a bit of a challenge. The positive was that I had some folks on the inside already. So I was coming in not totally unknown. And from what I was told when I got there was my presentation I did during the interviews was one of the ones that they enjoyed the most and actually got given to their sales team to use. And is still used today, actually, from what I'm told.
Ah, cool. That's
Uh,
awesome.
as far as transitioning like private fleets uh, an outside brokerage to mitigate risk and reduce costs, that kind of thing. So, and so they love that. So okay, like the guy, he doesn't look smart, but he is. So that helped. And I think what has always helped me, and again, this is me specific, but others can do this too, as you find your own ways. I don't look like the average person in any way, shape, or form. I don't look like the average logistics person in any way, shape, or form. And I absolutely don't look like the average leader anywhere. So that invites a lot more conversation right away.
Hmm.
And almost always it is non-work related conversation. And so what I have found is if for anyone, again, not everybody's going to be like me, look like me, like that, but what are the things about yourself that you can interject so people can kind of know that about you that is not work related? Because what that does, it builds interpersonal connection. And as people get to know the different things about you, like in your case, Jamie, obviously you played college soccer, you played Division 1, you played for a smaller school. When people find that out, they go, "Oh, that's interesting. Like, tell me about that experience." It gets totally away from the professional side, which, let's be real, we're guys, and you and I have been friends for a long time. Regardless, every now and then there's a little bit of measuring going on, like, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do?" And guys especially are terrible about this.
Yeah.
So when you can have experiences that are so unique, there isn't any measuring going on. It's more just, oh, I'm just getting to know this person, and they're just interesting, and then show that same level of interest in whatever it is other people do. That for me has worked a ton because I also know that because of how I look, I can also be very intimidating sometimes. So I have to be able to break those walls down very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So finding ways to connect with non-work related things and then get into, okay, so like tell me about your experience here and what do you do? Especially if I'm working with any other leaders or if I'm working with anybody who may be either a direct report or somebody else's report but doesn't report directly to me. I want to make them feel very, very comfortable talking to me at all times. And so that's then taking interest in what they do professionally. That then comes, oh, well, what is it you're doing here? Oh, I'm running this team. Oh, cool. Like, sounds awesome. I'll let you know if I need anything. So I try to downplay like what I do with the organization and really get excited about what they do and also talk about things I do outside of work. That tends to help really build that up so that my little corner over here, and then what they hear is from other leaders like, oh, there's Nikki. Um, so Nikki, you can say hi, Jason.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not live.
Hi.
okay.
Yeah.
You're okay.
So, so yeah, so I hope that kind of rambled there a little bit, but I hope that makes sense. Is really like my
Yeah.
part is really over here professionally, but everything else, because again, it connects people, and then I really make a big deal out of what they do.
Talk about your brand that you've built, especially on LinkedIn. When people are, even when they're not unemployed, but especially when they, if they've, as a lot of people are, including myself, like have gone through a layoff recently and building a brand out on LinkedIn. What is some advice you have there on, from the simple stuff of like what your actual LinkedIn profile looks like to the type of things you do and don't post? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, this is easy advice to say versus receive sometimes.
Of
Build
course.
it before you need it. Build it before you need it.
Yeah.
Um, when I started really pushing the strongest man in logistics in 2021, I already had it kind of set up in 2020, and Yeah, it's stemmed out of just, hey, like I like lifting weights. I like picking up heavy circles with my friends, and it's like, and I'm halfway decent at it. So knowing that, like I knew I had something very unique that I could do. So I think like your Instagram handle, I think is one of the funnest, the trendy trainer. Like I love that. Like because it is very, very unique.
Yeah.
So build it before you need it. That's huge. Um, but in the case where like, hey, like you're unemployed or looking to kind of start something else, start with interacting with other profiles before you start putting your own stuff out. Because one, you'll get the feel for the platform. Even if you've already interacted on the platform before, you'll start to really get the feel for it, I think, a little better. And how I set up my LinkedIn from my page perspective and then my content. The page is just it's my background. I make
Mhm.
sure that I put as much extra stuff aside from just my work. So if I've got certificates, if I've got um, special awards or like, and if yes, you look at my LinkedIn profile, yes, all my national world championships are listed on there because they're cool and they're dope, and I have them and you
Yeah,
don't. And
absolutely.
so, and actually, I'm waiting till after this meet here in a few weeks, and then I'm going to list my 2 straight years of bomb outs as well because like the bomb squad is pretty cool. Um, but I got to make sure that that streak's over before I go brag on things.
Right, right, right.
From a content perspective, I go in a lot of waves as far as what I do. What I want to make sure I put out there is a variety of professionally related, and I always try to relate everything to professional stuff. Uh, whether it's leadership, whether it's people skills or sales, or just overall like organizational type things. Uh, but again, try to find different ways to connect it. I connected to my family, like I did one the other day of just one is how thankful I am, given it's November, season of
Yeah,
thankfulness, and shameless plug to get a picture of me and my granddaughter on LinkedIn because it always gets good traction.
sure,
Um,
sure.
but it comes back to like why do I do what we do? I want to be there for the American professional driver. I think back to Roger and those conversations having, in front of the truck at I-80 truck stop. Like I want to be there for those type of people. I want to be there for my family, the next generation of logisticians and people that are in the space. And I want to do cool stuff. I want options. So like that does way more than a role, and it shifts people's mindset. So some thought leadership, you're not going to get there right away. So it starts with you interact with other people, you start putting out your own content. And honestly, the first thing I tell people to do, tell your story. How the heck did you get into your space, whatever it is you do? I don't care if you slang freight. I don't care if you work in HR. I don't care if you're a nurse. If you're going to start putting stuff on any social platform, start with your story. And about every couple years, if you're consistent, retell the story, give some updates. I did one post that I actually got the idea from another friend of mine. Also, you can take some ideas from other people and just revamp them as your own. My
Yeah,
suggestion is always give them credit because
yeah,
one, gets more reach. Two, it allows you to show thankfulness and show appreciation for that. Um, but I kind of told the story in a different way of like, this was me at 21. This was me at 25. It was a letter to myself.
yeah.
And like one, I suggest people, and I might repost it actually today just because go and do that exercise. I think you and I talked about this actually. It's powerful, it's emotional, but it's if you do it to the point it almost brings you to tears, like as other people read it, they make this connection to you. What I love the most, I put out all this content, I make it a point that I do a post every single day,
Hmm.
even if it's something silly. Like I was debating what I was going to do for the election. I just did the whole like, hey, go vote. I almost just posted a picture of Debo from Friday, like you won't get involved. Which like I have that on deck. I usually keep that on deck for
Yeah,
election. Um, but it's just consistency. So simple profile, talk about other things outside of your profession so you connect to people on a different level, interact with other profiles and other content because it helps build a network. It gets people interested in you. And then be very, very real, be authentic. I think one of the best people at that, honestly, is Morgan McDermott from Journey.
yep.
But Morgan is one of the most authentic, real people you'll ever meet. She's incredible. And and I could list off a dozen other people, but she is one that always comes to mind. Like Morgan's Morgan, and I
Well,
love her.
and
Awesome.
she's just legitimately at this point a super fun follow because she's always going
Oh,
somewhere cool.
I'm
So I'm like,
saying, like she's in the Caribbean right now. Like, dude, like, that's amazing.
I have just about anybody that I end up chatting with that doesn't follow her, I'm like, you should follow Morgan because you can just
Yeah.
see like cool places you maybe have never even seen before, like the Ice Hotel and just like all this cool
And,
stuff that she does.
and I thought there's other too. There's other like great follows. Like again, this is other stuff you and I have talked about, but like people like Chris Jolly or Trey Griggs or
Yep.
Ryan Schreiber, people that put out, and all three of those people put out very different types of content. But it gives you an idea. Like this is like I want to do this stuff that is all tech related, or like I want to be the voice of the people, kind of like Chris Jolly. He's got one of the best morning shows there is in the space. Um, or like Trey, who's like he has all these different mediums to talk to leaders, and so you get all these different perspectives on leadership, through him and through Beta Consulting. So one, go follow those three people if you're listening to this, and yeah, find the voice that works for you and keep it yours. Like, don't bend to what the algorithm says. If you get a post that only gets 100 impressions, so be it. Let it ride. Let it ride. Would you like to know what the most uh interacted with post I've had the entire year?
Yeah.
It was me talking about my nutrition when I'm on the road.
Of course.
It literally is three pictures of like the food I'm prepping for before I leave that week and what I do when I'm on the road to maintain that.
So funny what trends and what doesn't.
It was insane. 47,000 impressions in 6 days.
Yeah. I've learned pretty quickly. Well, I shouldn't even say this isn't a recent thing because it happens on Instagram too, but if as long as I include my wife in the post, it's always guaranteed numbers.
It's valid, and I get why. Kelsey's pretty dope.
Yeah, she's I tell everybody she's the impressive one. I just try to keep up. So
Yeah, I hear you. We have kept our coverage pretty well. So
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, hey dude, I appreciate us you taking the time to chat with me. As always,
absolutely, man.
we need to get together again for dinner and drinks and stuff again soon.
Absolutely. Hopefully celebratory drinks soon.
Yeah, hopefully celebratory drinks soon.
Yeah.
Um, like I said earlier, I could sit here and talk to you till tonight if we really wanted to, but
Okay. So I'm gonna put you on the spot
yeah,
because I've told people like, hey, Jason can confirm we played soccer together in high school and college.
yeah.
Please tell one stupid ass story of us playing together.
Like I would like to tell my favorite one of you just literally jumping up and grabbing the
Do
goalpost.
it. Do it.
So that I mean that's basically the story is that you I don't what were you trying to do? I don't remember. Right, just trying to
We
be
were we
on
were
it.
we were pulling the goals in to do 7-on-7,
Yeah.
and everybody had already moved one goal, and I just sprinted down to the other end to grab the other one.
Yeah, and he just Robert just jumped up and grabbed this goalpost, the crossbar, and next thing we knew it was like slow motion. It just falling down. You're not even as big as you are today by any means, but still big dude compared to the rest of the soccer players. And it's just slow motion bar.
Yep.
It was like a movie where it just falls on you and just crushes you instantly. Honestly, if it had been somebody smaller, it might have crushed them instantly. But it was it was so classic. Like just you didn't think it through. You just ran over there.
Nope.
Act first, think second.
Yes, yes. My favorite part of that is I know everyone I remember this. Everyone comes sprinting over, and Nate Klein, our goalie at the time, tells me this later because everyone sees me shaking because I'm laughing,
Yeah.
and everyone thought I was having a seizure.
Yeah, we thought we nobody knew if we should be because it was funny, but it was also like we should probably make sure he's not dead first. So it was like we weren't quite sure how to react. And then obviously once we saw you were like fine, then it
Oh
became
yeah, then never lived it down, and actually got an award at the awards
yeah, you
ceremony.
did. That's right. Yeah,
Hang
classic.
on, the award. All right,
All
bro.
right,
Hey,
man.
this has been fun.
Yeah, agreed. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you, man.
Cool. See ya.